The morning sun filtered through the curtains like any other day, golden and soft. Jack sat at the kitchen table, his coffee untouched, eyes glued to the email on his laptop screen. There it was, her confession. "Jack, I can't do this anymore. I've met someone else. He makes me feel alive again." The words blurred as his vision welled up. Anna, his wife of 12 years, had written it like a letter to a distant friend, not a man she once said she'd grow old with. No warning. No fight. Just goodbye. The silence in the house suddenly became unbearable. Their wedding photo still hung above the fireplace, smiling ghosts mocking him. Jack stood slowly, the chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor, and walked toward the frame, his hands trembling. He didn't touch it. He couldn't. Instead, he turned away and sank onto the couch, the room spinning with betrayal. In that moment, Jack's world collapsed, not with a bang, but with a quiet, merciless whisper. Jack didn't move for hours. The clock ticked mechanically, each second like a hammer to his chest. He kept replaying their last night together, Anna humming while making tea, kissing his cheek before bed, whispering, "Good night, love." Had that been a lie too? Was she already planning to leave? He reached for his phone, a reflex, then froze. Her contact stared back at him from the screen, still saved as Anna warned. His thumb hovered over it before he locked the phone and set it aside. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, a world continuing despite his stopped heart. He felt foolish, betrayed not just by Anna, but by himself, for not seeing it coming. Every shared smile, every touch, now felt scripted. The betrayal wasn't just in her leaving. It was in how normal she made things seem before she vanished. Jack exhaled long and slow and laid his head back against the couch, eyes open, staring into nothing. In the days that followed, Jack drifted like a ghost. Work emails piled up unanswered, dishes stacked in the sink, and every corner of the house whispered memories of Anna. Her scarf still hung by the door. Her favorite mug sat on the drying rack. The echoes of her laughter danced through the empty halls. Friends reached out, concerned, but Jack didn't answer. What could he say? That his life had imploded? That the woman who once called him her soulmate now held someone else's hand? He spent his nights scrolling through old photos, each image a dagger cloaked in nostalgia. They looked so happy, were they? Or was it all theater? The cruel part was, he didn't even hate her. He just missed her. That made it worse. It made him feel pathetic. He stared at their anniversary photo for a long time, then flipped it face down. The silence was his only companion, and it was deafening. Jack's breaking point came quietly. He was in the shower, steam curling around him, when the ache inside finally broke loose. He slid down the tiled wall, water cascading over his slumped body, sobs escaping in muffled gasps. He hadn't cried in years, not really. But this wasn't just about Anna. It was everything. The years he'd invested. The plans they made. The home they built. All gone. The sound of water drowned his cries, but his chest heaved with every memory that flooded in. Her smile. Her warmth. The way she used to run her fingers through his hair when he felt overwhelmed. That woman was gone, and he couldn't find the strength to hate her for it. That's what hurt most. He wanted closure, but all he had was silence. Jack stayed there long after the water turned cold, hoping the stream might wash something away. It didn't. Later that night, Jack sat on the edge of their bed, his bed now. Her side remained untouched, the pillow still indented. He reached over slowly and laid his hand there. It was cold. Like her absence had frozen time. He remembered how she used to curl into him when the nights got chilly, how they'd share whispered dreams and quiet laughter. It all felt like another life. Jack stood, walked to her closet and opened it. Her clothes still hung there, untouched, defiant reminders of what used to be. He pressed his face into one of her sweaters, inhaling her scent, as tears streamed freely now. No more holding back. No more pretending he was okay. He whispered, "Why? into the stillness. But the walls had no answers. Only the smell of lilac and the cruel weight of memory. And so, Jack sat in the dark, wrapped in her sweater, surrounded by ghosts. Jack started to wander the house like a stranger in his own life. Days blended together in silence. He no longer opened the curtains in the morning. Light hurt. White. On the 5th day he finally left the house, walking without purpose. The autumn wind tugged at his coat as he passed the bakery where he and Anna used to get croissants every Sunday. Inside, a young couple laughed over coffee. He paused, then moved on. At the park, he sat on a cold bench watching children play, their joy alien to him. He thought, how do you rebuild when your foundation is ash? He pulled out his phone again, stared at Anna's contact, then shoved it back in his pocket. Not yet. His grief was raw, but something new stirred beneath it. Not anger, not healing, but a quiet awakening. Jack didn't want to feel empty forever. But he had no idea where to begin. At home, Jack opened the bedroom window for the first time in days. The breeze carried a chill, but he welcomed it. He looked out across rooftops and thought about his old dreams. The house with a porch. The dog. The little garden Anna said she'd tend. All gone now. That night, Jack made dinner for one. He cooked their favorite meal, chicken piccata, not out of nostalgia, but ritual. The sizzle of the pan, the smell of garlic and lemon, filled the silence with something familiar. As he ate alone, he found himself talking aloud. You said forever, Anna. The words echoed back at him. He didn't cry this time. Instead, he felt a quiet steadiness. Pain hadn't left, but it no longer ruled him. He was still standing, still breathing, and that meant something. He took another bite, this time tasting it fully. The world hadn't ended. Not yet. Jack began to write. It wasn't a journal exactly, more like pieces of a puzzle. Thoughts, questions, bits of memory. On scraps of paper, post-it notes, the back of old bills. When did she start drifting? Was I too comfortable? Why didn't she tell me? He stuck them on the bedroom wall, creating a chaotic collage of heartbreak. It looked like something out of a detective movie, but it gave structure to the pain. Each note was a step toward understanding, even if there were no answers. He stood in front of the wall at night, arms crossed, rereading them silently. He didn't want to vilify Anna. He just wanted to know what had broken, and when. In the center of the mess, he pinned a photo of them laughing on vacation in Greece. Beneath it he wrote in sharp pen, "Was this real?" The ink bled slightly, just like his heart. Jack finally accepted an invitation, dinner with Mark, his old college friend. They met at a cozy pub, the smell of wood smoke and roast meat warming the air. "You look like hell," Mark said, half smiling. Jack chuckled. It felt good. Human. One. They talked, really talked, for hours, about music, old road trips, nothing and everything. Mark didn't offer advice. He just listened. Jack confessed, "I think I'm scared I'll never trust again." Mark nodded. "That's fair, but maybe don't start with trust. Start with you." That line stuck. Jack walked home in the chill, cheeks red from both the wind and a couple drinks. The night felt softer, less heavy. He realized he hadn't thought about Anna for nearly an hour. That was a victory. Small, maybe, but real. Healing didn't look like he thought it would. It looked like warm soup, dumb jokes, and quiet companionship. Back home, Jack took down the notes from the wall. Not in anger, just readiness. Some he folded into a box, others he threw away. The photo from Greece he kept, slipping it into a drawer without looking at it again. He didn't need answers anymore. That chapter had ended, and though he wasn't healed, he was moving. He started to clean the house, not for her return, but for himself. Room by room, he wiped away dust, rearranged furniture, opened windows. He bought a new bedsheet, pale blue, his favorite color. As he made the bed, a small smile tugged at his lips. It was uneven, unsure, but it was real. Jack stood in the center of the room, hands on hips, and whispered, "Okay." No one answered. But for the first time, silence didn't hurt. It simply was. He turned off the light and let the darkness settle around peace instead of pain. Across town, Anna lay on a strange bed, in a strange apartment, next to a man who once made her feel electrified. Ryan, the younger man, charming, spontaneous, wild. At first it was thrilling. Late-night concerts, impulsive getaways, passionate kisses in places she never dared before. But that fire was burning too hot, too fast. He no longer looked at her the same. He stayed out later, answered her questions with vague grunts. When she asked if something was wrong, he shrugged. "You're just a little intense lately." The words cut deeper than he knew. She stared at the ceiling that night, his back turned to her, and wondered if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. She missed safety. She missed laughter without judgment. She missed Jack. But pride chained her in silence. Anna pulled the blanket tighter and closed her eyes, pretending not to feel him slipping away. Ryan's phone buzzed constantly now. He smiled at texts he never explained. Anna pretended not to notice, but her stomach twisted with every vibration. She tried to reconnect, cooked him dinner, wore the dress he once complimented, but his gaze passed over her like she was furniture. "We're just different," he muttered when she asked if he still wanted this. "You knew that." That night he didn't come home. Anna sat alone at the dinner table, 2 candles flickering. His plate remained untouched, the food gone cold. Tears welled, but she didn't let them fall. She reached for the wine, poured a glass with shaking hands, and sipped slowly. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was humiliation. She had left a marriage, a man who adored her for this. And now, she couldn't even admit how badly she wanted to go back. But she didn't know if Jack would ever want her again. Ryan's change became undeniable. One evening, Anna overheard him laughing on the phone. Soft, flirtatious, unmistakably intimate. "Nah, she's just someone I'm crashing with right now," he said. Her blood froze. He didn't see her in the hallway, her face drained of color. She waited until he left the next morning, then began packing her things. With each folded shirt, each zipped bag, reality pressed harder on her chest. She thought she'd feel empowered walking out. Instead, she felt hollow. She sat on the edge of the bed, suitcase beside her, and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes looked older, sadder. There was no trace of the bold woman who left Jack. Just regret. She picked up her phone, hovered over Jack's contact. "He probably hates me," she whispered. But her fingers moved anyway. She typed one word, "Jack?" Then hit send. Jack saw the message while standing in line at the grocery store. Just one word. "Jack?" His thumb hovered over it for a long time. He stared at it like a flame. Dangerous, familiar, tempting. Back home he finally responded, "What do you want?" She replied quickly, "Can we talk?" It was surreal. The woman who walked out without warning now sought his voice. He debated not replying, but curiosity cracked through his resolve. "Call me," he wrote. The phone rang a minute later. Her voice was soft, cautious. "Hi." Jack didn't respond right away. He let the silence hang until she spoke again. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I didn't know who else to call." His voice when it came was flat. "What happened?" Anna exhaled. "He left me." Jack closed his eyes. Somehow, it hurt more than he expected to hear that. They talked for 40 minutes. Mostly Anna Day. She cried, apologized, unraveled. Jack said little, letting her fill the space with regret. At one point she whispered, "I miss you." Jack's jaw tightened. He wanted to scream, to tell her she didn't get to say that anymore. But all he said was, "Why now?" Her voice cracked. "Because I thought I wanted more. But I had everything." The silence that followed was heavier than any words. Jack stood by the window watching the wind move the trees. He felt years of pain surge and scatter inside him. Part of him still loved her. Another part barely recognized her. "I don't know what you expect from me," he said finally. "I don't either," Anna admitted. "Just don't hang up yet." And he didn't. He stayed on the line. Not out of hope, but because the wound still ached. And she was part of it. Jack agreed to meet Anna, though every instinct told him not to. They chose a quiet cafe tucked away from the bustle. When she walked in, he barely recognized her. She looked smaller somehow, thinner, paler, carrying an invisible weight. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time blurred. She gave a faint, trembling smile. "Hi," she said. Jack nodded. No warmth, just acknowledgement. They sat in silence for a minute. She reached for the cup in front of her but didn't drink. "You look good," she offered. Jack didn't reply. He watched her fidget, watched the guilt seep through every movement. "I don't expect anything," she said softly. "I just needed to see you. Needed you to know that I was wrong." Her voice cracked. Jack inhaled slowly. "You didn't just leave me, Anna. You erased me." Her eyes filled, but he held his expression. He wasn't here to comfort. He was here to hear the truth. Anna opened up, one cracked confession at a time. She told Jack how the excitement with Ryan faded quickly, how it became a cycle of anxiety and silence. "He made me feel young," she whispered, "but he never made me feel safe." Her hands trembled. "I don't even know who I was when I left you." Jack listened, but his heart stayed cautious. He didn't interrupt. She talked about loneliness, about pretending to be fine, about missing the comfort of being understood without explanation. Jack's expression finally softened. "You left without letting me fight for us," he said. Anna looked down, ashamed. "I was scared you'd fight too well, and I didn't deserve to be chosen." That line hit something deep. For the first time, Jack saw past her betrayal and glimpsed the frightened woman underneath it. But seeing her pain didn't erase his own. It only made it more complicated. They walked after coffee, side by side but not touching. The park was quiet, leaves crunching beneath their feet. Jack stopped beneath an old oak tree. "You shattered me," he said, voice low. Anna didn't argue. "I know." The silence between them was different now, heavy with honesty. She turned to him. "Do you hate me?" He shook his head. "No, but I don't trust you. That's harder." Anna nodded slowly. "I don't trust myself either." It wasn't the answer he expected. Jack looked at her, really looked. She wasn't the same woman who left. And maybe he wasn't the same man waiting for her to come back. "I don't know what this is," he said, gesturing between them. "But it's not forgiveness, not yet." Anna blinked back tears. "I'm not asking for that. I just want to rebuild something, even if it's not what we had." Jack didn't reply. But he kept walking beside her. Days passed and they spoke more, slowly, cautiously. No promises. Just conversations. Jack invited her for lunch one afternoon. Not as lovers, not even as friends, just two people trying to understand what remained. They ate in his backyard, the table bare except for simple sandwiches and 2 glasses of lemonade. "This is strange," Anna said with a half smile. Jack agreed. But it wasn't painful. It was peaceful. She asked about his days, his new routines. He talked about walking more, writing, sleeping better. "I'm glad you're okay," she said. Jack met her eyes. "I'm not okay, but I'm not broken anymore." That truth lingered between them. Jack felt himself opening, not to love but to the idea of peace with the past. He didn't know where they were going, but for the first time he felt okay not needing to know. Healing, it seemed, wasn't about fixing. It was about facing. As Anna left that afternoon, Jack stood at the doorway watching her walk down the path. She turned once, offered a faint wave. He lifted his hand in return but didn't move. When the gate closed behind her, Jack didn't feel loss. He felt clarity. The chapter with Anna wasn't over, but it was no longer about waiting or wanting. It was about understanding. He stepped back inside and sat at the desk, picking up a pen. He didn't write about her this time. He wrote about himself. What he learned, what he wanted, who he was becoming. The hurt hadn't vanished. But now it lived beside a new feeling. Strength. Jack smiled softly to himself. Not because things were better, but because they were real. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he looked up at the darkening sky and whispered, "I'm still here." And that, finally, felt like enough. It had been a week since Anna's visit. Jack found himself thinking about her more often, not with longing, but curiosity. He wondered what healing looked like for her. One afternoon he received a message. "Would you meet me again? Just once more?" He hesitated, then replied, "Okay." They met at the art museum, a neutral place filled with silence and thought. As they moved through the gallery, Jack noticed Anna looking at a painting of two figures standing apart under the same umbrella. "That's how it feels," she said quietly. Jack nodded. Together but not close. They didn't touch, didn't try to bridge the gap. But they spoke with more ease. Anna laughed at something Jack said, a soft, genuine laugh, and for a moment it didn't hurt to hear it. Jack realized they weren't what they were. But maybe they could be something new. Something honest. Even if it had no name. Later, over coffee in the museum cafe, Anna asked softly, "Did you ever stop loving me?" Jack stirred his drink slowly, thinking. "Yes," he said. "But not all at once. More like, in pieces." She blinked, absorbing the quiet devastation in those words. "And now?" He looked at her, long and steady. "Now I love myself more." Anna didn't flinch. She nodded, as if she had expected that. "Good," she whispered. They sat in silence again, this time comfortable. There was no rush to define them. Jack felt the old guilt lift slightly from his chest. He wasn't betraying his past by moving forward. He was honoring it by accepting what was gone. Anna reached across the table, not to hold his hand, but to place her fingers near his. Just close enough to say, "I'm here." Jack didn't move away. He didn't close the gap either. And that felt right. That evening, Jack found himself standing before his bookshelf, searching for something. Not a book, but a reminder. He pulled out an old photo album, one he hadn't opened since she left. Sitting on the couch, he flipped through pages slowly. Vacations. Birthdays. Random Sunday mornings. For once, the memories didn't sting. They didn't lie either. They were real, just no longer current. In one photo, Anna was mid-laugh, her eyes half closed, flour on her nose from baking. Jack smiled. Not out of desire, but gratitude. That version of her existed. That chapter had meaning. He closed the album gently and set it aside. Healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about learning how to hold it without bleeding. Jack stood up, walked to the window, and let the air brush over him. This life, his life, was still unfolding. And it was his to write now. The next weekend, Jack went to a bookstore downtown. He hadn't been in months. As he browsed, a woman near the poetry shelf smiled at him. He nodded politely, not reading into it. But later she tapped his shoulder. "That's a good one," she said, pointing to the book in his hand. Jack looked at it. An anthology of healing and rediscovery. "Yeah?" he replied, smiling gently. They chatted briefly. Her name was Clara. She had a calming voice and curious eyes. As she left, she said, "You should read the poem on page 87. Jack waited until he got home. When he turned to the page, he read the words aloud. "You were never meant to burn alone in the dark. You are the match and the spark." He closed the book and held it to his chest. Not because of Clara, but because something new had entered his world, and he was ready. That night, Jack stood on his balcony, the sky above scattered with stars. He thought about everything: Anna, the pain, the silence, the rediscovery. He wasn't fixed. He wasn't finished. But he was no longer lost. He leaned against the railing, listening to the quiet hum of the city below, the rhythm of life continuing. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel behind. He was exactly where he needed to be. His phone buzzed, a message from Anna. "Thank you for meeting me. You didn't have to, but I'm glad you did." Jack stared at it, then typed, "Me too, take care, Anna," and hit send. He turned his gaze to the stars again, letting them remind him how vast the future was. "I'm ready," he whispered, not to anyone else, but to himself. It was not an ending. It was the turning of a page. Anna sat alone in a therapist's office for the first time in her life. The room was quiet, soft beige tones, and warm lighting creating a gentle space. Across from her, the therapist waited patiently. "I don't know where to start," Anna admitted, eyes downcast. "Start where it hurts," the therapist said gently. Anna exhaled. "I threw everything away. I had a good man, and I wanted more. I thought more meant better." She swallowed hard. It didn't. For the first time she voiced the shame that lived under her skin. "I think I was running from myself, not Jack." The therapist nodded. "So who are you now?" Anna didn't answer. Not yet. But the tears that welled in her eyes were honest. She wasn't seeking forgiveness anymore. She was seeking understanding. And maybe, just maybe, healing would begin in places Jack couldn't reach. Places she hadn't dared look until now. Meanwhile, Jack received an invitation to speak at a local creative writing group. Hesitant at first, he eventually agreed. On a chilly Tuesday evening, he stood before a small room of strangers. "I used to write love stories," he began. "Then I lived through one that ended." The room fell silent. But endings aren't failures. Sometimes they're just doorways we didn't expect to walk through. He read from one of his new pieces, raw, personal, steady. The applause afterward was soft but sincere. Later, someone approached him, an older woman. "Thank you," she said. "I thought I was the only one trying to rebuild from ashes." Jack smiled. He didn't feel alone anymore. That night, he walked home beneath streetlights and felt lighter. He hadn't found a new beginning. He had simply stopped fearing the end. And in that quiet strength, something new was forming. Not romance. Not regret. Just peace. Anna, walking through a bookstore, saw Jack's name on a local reading flyer posted by the entrance. She stared at it for a long time before stepping away. She didn't go in. Instead, she walked to the nearby park and sat on a bench, thinking. Her phone buzzed. It was her mother checking in. Anna answered, surprised at how good it felt to say, "I'm okay, really." She wasn't, not fully. But she was starting to be. She watched people pass, couples, kids, joggers. Life continuing. She no longer felt left behind. She wasn't trying to rewind or rewrite the past. She was simply learning how to be still in the present. The world didn't owe her a second chance with Jack. What it offered her instead was a mirror. She had choices now. And for the first time, she wasn't making them to be loved. She was making them to be whole. One evening, Jack ran into Anna unexpectedly at the grocery store. The encounter was brief, but kind. She reached for the same jar of honey, and they both laughed softly. "You still eat that?" she asked. "Some habits don't change," he said. There was no awkwardness, only shared familiarity. "You look well," she added. He nodded. "So do you." Neither lingered. No confessions, no rehashing. Just a small exchange, wrapped in quiet grace. As they parted ways, Jack turned back and called out, "I hope you're happy, Anna." She paused, then replied, "I'm learning to be." That moment stayed with him the rest of the night, not for what it could have meant, but for what it didn't have to. Closure wasn't a door slammed shut. It was a window opened gently, letting in a breeze. Jack smiled on the drive home. Healing wasn't loud. It was silent, and soft, and true. Jack stood once more at his balcony as winter approached, breath fogging in the crisp air. Below, the city glowed, a patchwork of lives, each with its own stories. He held a steaming mug, reflecting. He hadn't just survived heartbreak. He had outgrown it. Not by forgetting, but by understanding. He thought of Anna, not with pain, not with longing, but with recognition. She had been part of his becoming. And now, he was someone new. Someone honest. Someone whole. Inside, a new story waited on his desk, half-written. He smiled, stepped in from the cold, and sat down to finish it, not because it was perfect, but because it was his. Jack wrote the next sentence slowly, savoring each word. Outside, snow began to fall for the first time that year. A new season. A new page. And Jack, finally, was ready to write it. Weeks later, Jack was invited to speak at a university panel about storytelling and emotional truth. He stood on stage beneath soft lights, the audience filled with curious students. "We all love stories where someone is saved," Jack began, voice calm, steady. "But sometimes, the real story is about saving ourselves." He spoke of grief, of letting go, of how pain isn't a villain, it's a mirror. As he shared part of his journey, he noticed a few people nodding, eyes glassy. When the panel ended, students approached him, not to praise but to thank. "You helped me understand something I couldn't name," one said. Jack left the building that evening with a strange mix of exhaustion and peace. He wasn't sharing his past to bleed. He was sharing it because it had healed. And in that, there was power. Quiet, grounded, and deeply human. Anna, meanwhile, returned to her old hometown to visit her aging father. They hadn't spoken much in years, but she sat beside him on the porch, watching the wind stir the trees. "You seem different," he said after a long silence. Anna smiled faintly. "I'm learning who I am when I'm not someone's escape." Her father gave a knowing nod. "Takes most people a lifetime to get there." That night, Anna walked through the quiet streets of her childhood, memories stirring with every step. She didn't feel haunted anymore. Just reflective. She wasn't trying to fix the past now. She was tending to the present. She paused by her old school fence, ran her fingers along the cold metal. The girl she once was would have wanted love to be perfect. But the woman she was becoming just wanted it to be honest. And maybe that started with herself. Back home, Jack received a package with no return address. Inside was a small framed photo, their anniversary in Greece. No, just the image. He stared at it for a long moment, then placed it gently in a drawer. Not to hide it, but to honor it quietly. He opened his laptop, the cursor blinking on a fresh page. This wasn't another story about heartbreak. It was about choice, about resilience, about the quiet dignity of letting go. He began typing slowly. "There's a kind of love that teaches you how to stay, and there's a kind that teaches you how to leave, but the rarest kind teaches you how to return to yourself." He paused, reread the sentence, and smiled. The past didn't have to be rewritten to be respected. It just had to be placed on the shelf. And his hands, finally, were free to write something new. One late evening, Jack received a single text from Anna. "I'm proud of you." No pretense. No strings. He read it and set the phone down without reply. Not out of bitterness, but because it didn't need a response. She wasn't reaching out to pull him back. She was letting him go. He appreciated that. From his window, snowflakes swirled again, soft and slow. Jack turned off the lights and stood in the dark, watching the sky move. Not everything had to end with grand gestures or dramatic closure. Some things ended gently, like a season changing, like a song fading. That text, simple, sincere, was their final note. And it was enough. Jack closed his eyes, let the quiet hold him, and exhaled. Not because it hurt, but because he'd finally made peace with it all. The next morning, Jack went for a walk just before sunrise. The city was quiet, the streets slick with melted snow. Each step felt steady, present. He paused on a footbridge as the first light crept over the skyline. A jogger passed by. A bird sang. The world wasn't waiting for him to catch up anymore. He was walking with it. Jack pulled a notebook from his coat pocket and scribbled a single line. I didn't lose myself. I just hadn't met him yet. He closed the notebook, eyes bright. No tears. No weight. Just the sunrise, and a man reborn through every scar. As he stood on that bridge, with the world waking up around him, Jack smiled to himself. Quietly. Unforgettably. It wasn't a return to love. It was a return to life. And it was beautiful.